Liam Watson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I'm failing at life. I always figured I'd have it more together by now. More money, more muscle, a better business. Judging myself by the standards of outliers is always going to leave me feeling like I'm falling short. I know, but I want to be one of the outliers who are succeeding.
I've heard that somewhere before.
You said it. Don't tell me about that.
I guess it's one of those things, whatever it is that you do, whatever kind of goal you're striving towards, you view a certain goal as the be all and end all. You get there and it's like opening the next door, unlocking the next level, and like, oh wait, I'm still pretty low down on the chain of this career, this industry, whatever it is. It's like getting your first professional contract in football and I've got a professional contract. Oh, but I play in League Two. And it's like the way you view the professional contract before you're a professional, it's everything. It's like this, grand pedestal. And then you get there and you realize it's not quite what I envisioned it to be. And I envisioned having that professional contract as being, I'm a big star, I've made it. And it's just not quite what I envisioned of life. And I guess you grow up watching outliers, whether that's YouTube, movies. You don't see movies about normal people. You see movies, and particularly biopics, about people who've had some kind of extraordinary life. And so you grow up kind of expecting that if you've got an extraordinary goal, that's going to be you. If you're a businessman, you look at Ben Francis and the guy's got a billion pound business at 20 something. And I guess I turned 23 about a month and a bit ago, and I looked back on what I thought 23 would look like as 13, 14-year-old Liam, and I just thought it would be more than it was.
I guess we set incredibly high standards for ourselves. And I think in that, I was having a conversation with one of my friends. He's older, he's like in his 30s now. And we were talking about overthinking. And one of the things I said to him was, people who are overthinkers tend to be high achievers. So maybe this is like the Rosetta Stone to success. This is the thing that you need in order to be successful. But then he then gave a counter argument to that, being that, sure, most high achievers are overthinkers, but isn't that just survivor's bias? High achievers are overthinkers. Doesn't mean all overthinkers are high achievers. And I think this is, it's one of the problems that I'll be facing, that you'll be facing. Like a lot of people who want to do something extraordinary in their lives will be facing, because there's this level of uncertainty. You don't know if things will work out. And what's interesting about uncertainty is it's great to understand, I don't know if things are going to work out, but I think, at least for me, I'm so focused on the fact that things could work out that I don't even realize that things couldn't, even though there's a pretty high chance that things couldn't go the way that I wanted to, which actually ends up happening for a lot of people. So we kind of think that, if I have the right goals, and if I do everything by the book, I should get the success that I deserve. But that doesn't end up being the case, because there's so many other factors that come into it.
Mm-hmm. Luck. Just, what is it? The first building block of life is luck. You don't know. I think this is especially true in my field in bodybuilding, because genetics is so much of a factor. You get the people who aren't doing everything right, people who aren't necessarily working super hard, but because they have the genetics, it happened to them. And then on the other side of that, you get the people who are ticking every box, doing everything perfectly, doing everything they know they should be doing, and it just doesn't happen for them. And it's a little bit more immediately apparent within bodybuilding, because you're literally looking at two bodies rather than like business strategies or things like that. But it's a lot more commonly seen that just because you're doing everything right doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to work out for you. And it's annoying being sort of in the middle of that, doing everything right, but then not quite having what in bodybuilding the case of luck would be, luck of genetics. Not quite having the superior genetics to have that luck of making it super well. So I think you can cross it over, like particularly to what you're doing. Like you don't know, like tomorrow you could meet someone who says, hey, do you want to do an internship with Chris Williamson? And then you already doing everything right could suddenly just absolutely blow up and you've changed nothing. But then equally that might not happen.
Well, I guess the pushback with the entire thing about luck, I think luck could be when preparation meets opportunity.
Yes.
I think it's very easy to say, I hope that things fall into my lap in the way that I wanted to. If I keep doing the right things, eventually something comes by. But I think luck isn't something that just happens. I think it's sometimes for some people it does. I mean, like in the case of genetics and bodybuilding, like you're literally just born with this. But I think you don't get in a position to be lucky unless you've done the preparation beforehand. So let's put it like this. In my case, right? If I hadn't been doing the podcasting thing at all, given the example that you gave me, that situation of do you want to do internship with Chris Williamson would have never come about because I would have never even put my name in the space at all.
Perhaps, but then the counter argument to that is, and I may be getting this wrong, but I know the example of it is correct. And I'm pretty sure it's Jason Statham. Had no desire to be an actor or anything. He was working as a model. And I think it was Guy Ritchie on, I think it was Snatch, his first film, or Lock, Stock, just found him in like a bar or somewhere one day and just went, you look really cool. Do you want to be in my film? And he was doing nothing regarding film acting. He was just, getting pictures taken of him in his underwear. And then this thing that just fell into his lap with no preparation. And now, not saying obviously since then he hasn't worked insanely hard to, get where he is, but the counter argument is then sometimes luck just does happen.
Yeah.
With no preparation. And it's that life is unfair kind of adage. You can work super, super hard and not get it. Or you could be Jason Statham, you could be born sexy as fuck and just have luck fall into your lap, and then the preparation comes after the luck. He's got the luck, he's got his first role, he nails it, and then from then on, that's where he starts preparing, he starts working hard, ticking all his boxes and builds a bigger career out of it. But the initial building block is meeting Guy Ritchie in a pub somewhere.
Yeah. Sometimes people just need that. The starting with a catalyst to causing yourself to actually do something. It's like it's the activation energy towards pursuing something meaningful. Like you could want to do something. Like I could want to do podcasting. You could want to do really well in bodybuilding, but you are in a much better position when you have been given that activation energy. And for some people, it's just like fucking grind. I can't have the luck that other people have. I don't have the genetics other people have. That just means I have to work 10 times harder to get the same results they get while working 10 times less than me. Which is, like life is unfair adage, but I guess you can either be the person who whines about it or the person who works and does something about it.
Yeah.
And I think one other way that you can look at it is that people who just get it or who just get given that fuel where things just fall in their lap, the character traits that you would have built along working from the bottom to where you want to be, they wouldn't have those because they just got it. It's like when you see the kids who are super rich because their parents are super rich and they end up being spoiled and stubborn. That's just because the character traits you would have built to work from zero to wealth would have made you into a better person. But if you just got it,
had it handed to you.
Yeah. And as controversial as it is, I'm pretty sure Tate talks about this. It's like, I could give you 10 grand or I could give you 100K. But what use is that if you have no idea how to use that 100K, like how to make more money out of it?
Yeah.
Like, you just come back to me for more money.
Give a man a meal, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for life.
Yeah.
Same with money, same with business, same with anything, I suppose. That's where the phrase comes from. So, yeah, exactly. You see all these rich kids going bankrupt, but then you don't see the people that have worked their way from like complete nothingness to millionaire, billionaire, whatever. You don't see it happen to them.
How have you dealt with falling short in your own life?
I think for the most part, I've just kind of internalized it because realistically, I haven't fallen short.
What do you mean by internalize it?
Like, I just kind of keep it to myself. Don't let it influence actions or anything like that, because from a rational standpoint, I haven't fallen short at anything. From a more emotional standpoint, like said at the start, I wanted to be further along. So rationally, I haven't fallen short. Emotionally, I want to say I've fallen short. I expected more. But as a rational man, I know, okay, that's my emotional thought. That's my illogical thought. It's my feelings. It doesn't make it invalid, but also doesn't make it true. So it's, when I say internalize it, maybe I just mean ignore it to a large extent. And I try to take in a lot of positive media. I try to like take in things like this podcast, Chris Williamson podcast, Sean Ryan, things where people talk about like positive mind frames and how to be a better man, how to deal better with emotion. So when I say I ignore it, I don't completely shove it deep down and, let it fester and bottle it up. I still allow myself to feel I've fallen short. But then it's kind of, okay, that's how you feel. Fine. Get on with shit. So you kind of just, I kind of accept it, but move on from it. Can try not to let it linger on my mind at all. Because if it does, that just is, you let anything negative, any kind of negative thoughts linger on your mind too long, I think it just leads to a bit of a spiral. Whether they're rational or purely emotional.
The comparison between the emotion and the rational mind is something that's really interesting. It's something I've been reading into a lot as well, so you've touched on a really fucking juicy topic. I think, so our intuitions usually act first when a situation happens to us, as you've gone about. It's just like, this particular thing has happened to me. My instant reaction is to feel bad. There could be many reasons why that's happened. What was it like? Jimmy Carr says, the difference between happiness is the difference between expectations and reality. So if you expect highly of yourself and you fall short, you're going to find yourself like, it's like you posit an ideal, you then compare yourself to that ideal, and inevitably there's going to be this gap that you look at. This is why I lack. And this is a strange one that I think about a lot, where it's like, do I allow myself to feel this through and then keep working as I was before? Or do I allow this to become this chip on my shoulder, this activation energy, to then work harder at something? And this is a great thing that you touched upon. and I want to hear your thoughts on this. I get that everyone who's successful says self-love. You should give yourself small achievements. You should take a break now and then. But it's easy for them to say when they're successful, because you're in the spot where you can say like, oh, yeah, I should have rested more. I should have done X, Y, Z. But that's not what got you to the position you're in now.
Luxury belief.
Yeah, it's a luxury belief. That's not what built the position we're in. And I think it's contradictory to say, yeah, self-love, appreciate yourself, go for the small wins, and that's what's going to keep you consistent, when that's not the thing that kept you consistent when you were doing it. And I guess Chris Williamson has this idea about the model the rise, not the result. See what the person was doing when they were in the position you're in now, not what they're doing right now.
Yeah, that's so, I find myself saying that all the time to steer back to the bodybuilding thing. And it's kind of, I see that so often. People go, oh, my favorite bodybuilder did XYZ for their workout. And then you go, yeah, but that's not what they did to get where they are.
Yeah.
That's what they do now that they are 300 pounds shredded. That's not what they did when they were 170 pounds skinny fat. So it's so true that model the rise, not the result. That like really resonates within bodybuilding, because a lot of people don't see it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the same within any industry. If you're idolizing someone at the top, you want to go, right, what are they doing? Rather than what you should say is, what were they doing? So I like that. Model the rise, not the result. That's good. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can think of plenty of times where I've looked at someone who I admired and I was like, I need what they have right now in order. But then again, this could be, you could argue against this, because the stuff that they have now clearly is what's helping them do the right thing in that particular moment. And there's certain contexts in which taking things from them does work, what they're doing right now, because what they may have been doing earlier may have not been the most efficient thing.
Yes.
It may have not been the thing that could have gotten the quickest rise. Like, yeah, sure, they rose and they were doing these things, and then lots of mistakes, successes, and that gotten.
Could they have done better?
Could they have done better from where they started? So I think it's very contextual, and it's very situated, as many things are, which is so annoying to me. It's like not everything's black and white. There's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of gray in this situation here. It's like, what do I take from them that they're doing now? What do I take that what they were doing before? If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, it's not black and white. You can't. Well, but then you've just got to be chronological and apply it to the situation, or even better, rather than trying to watch and infer what someone's doing versus what they did, listen to them. Ask them, what did you do to get where you are? And then they'll say, oh, I did X, Y, Z, but in hindsight, X was a bit of a waste of time. I should have just done Y, Z. Which is why I like podcasts.
Yeah.
Because you can literally just listen to them. You don't have to watch a load of YouTube videos or piece together things over time and come up with your own answer. You can just ask them. And if they believe they could have done it better, chances are they'll probably say, unless they're like massively prideful and go, yeah, I did everything perfect, they'll probably go, yeah, I did that for a couple of years. In hindsight, didn't really do much for me. I should have just kept doing whatever else.
Is there anything in bodybuilding that you think you could have done better previously?
Oh yeah, loads.
Like what?
Absolutely. I should have got a coach a lot sooner, but that was the old teenage belief of, shut up, I know best, which is the same in everything. You're a teenager, nobody can tell you what to do. So I got my first coach, who I'm still with, at, I'm going to say 20 years old, maybe 21.
3 years. Oh, yeah.
And granted, whilst I don't think I necessarily did anything wrong in the couple years prior to that, past the sort of beginner stage of making mistakes and learning from them, whilst I didn't necessarily do things wrong, I think things could have been better if I just had someone more experienced, more knowledgeable to just say, that's a waste of time. Don't do that. Do it this way instead. So I know I could have been slightly further ahead than where I am now had I had a coach to, because that eliminates so many mistakes, because a coach doesn't just like give you a training plan. They cover, PEDs, nutrition, recovery, any like fads that come across social media and you go, oh, I'm going to buy into that. They can be there and go, listen, I've been doing this 20 years. It's a load of shit. So that in and of itself, I think could have eliminated so many of the small mistakes, things that were maybe just a bit of a waste of time, not inherently wrong, just not, I hate the word, but optimal.
Yeah.
It's a horrible buzzword right now, particularly in the gym. Because and I always say this is within the fitness industry as a whole. Everything that people do wrong is the right thing taken too far. And I'm sure you're aware of all the like optimal science-based training, all that stuff. Everything they're doing isn't inherently wrong. It's just taken too far.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the same with anything in the fitness industry. They take the right message and then multiply it to the point where it's in that everlasting search for optimal, whatever that is. It's the same as, if you've got a lot of work to knock out, right? What's the optimal morning routine? Do this, and this, or just get up and start working.
Yeah.
You can spend 2 hours in your morning routine to set up your day optimal, or you could just get up and start working. That's 2 hours of extra work. Is that in and of itself not more optimal? So I kind of hate the words optimal right now, because everyone wants to say, everyone wants to put it on something that's not optimal, that's too optimal, whatever. It's such a buzzword within like my career, within my sort of social media bubble. Hear it all the time. I hate it.
I guess people want to get the best bang for their buck. Yes, like if I put leverage, like that's the main thing. If I put
Abraham Lincoln, I'm going to paraphrase this terribly. If you asked me to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 3 hours sharpening my axe, and something like that. I've butchered that quote so badly, but you know the one. If I had 4 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 3 hours sharpening my axe.
Mm.
But then, is there a middle ground? Could you spend 2 hours?
Yeah, I reckon there is a point of diminishing returns. Like, considering that example, there's going to be a point where you've sharpened the axe and
can't get any
sharper. And if anything, if you keep sharpening it, you might end up dulling it. There may be like this point of inflection where it's like sharpen. Now you're still sharpening, and now it's kind of getting dull from the point where it was before. It's just
the right thing taken too far.
Yeah, this reminds me of this one quote, and I can't remember who said this. It was something along the lines as, everything everyone says is wrong, but it depends how wrong it is before it's right. Shit, I'm completely losing this. That made no sense. It was something along those lines, but it's just this entire idea. I read this in that quote was from a different book, but this idea was from the Courage to be Disliked. And in that book, it talks about how advice are just stopgap measures. So if anyone tells you how to do a particular thing, this is my piece of advice for you. It's at some point like that piece of advice doesn't really apply to you. It's so general that you can't even take it past a certain point. You can get it through maybe like 1 or 2 times, depending on what the piece of advice is, but it's not going to solve your entire issue, because your issue is very contextual. It's very subjective to you. And we're going to go onto this later, but I'll just mention it here. The masculinity movement, right? Where it's like, do you need to be more masculine? But the thing is, that can be sold so easily. It's like star signs. It's so vague. that you can chuck your issue into it, or your problems into your life into it, and then get a response. Just because how vague it is. It's not specific, so you can relate to it. Same thing with the masculinity thing. It's so vague. Like, masculinity will save your life. So then everyone can buy into that because there's no specificity to it. It's just this broad thing.
Misunderstood too.
Yeah. And to go back to the science-based lifting thing, giving everyone this piece of advice is very contextual. It's like, yeah, sure, these guys, Mr. Olympia and them lot got great results from doing their optimal based training. But again, back to the thing, more to the rise, not the result. Have you ever seen anyone who has got into the physique that you admire that's done this fucking tricep extension over like a curve with a cable like 5 meters back sort of thing?
With a cuff attached to a D handle, band around their shoulder to stabilize the IC joint, all of that bollocks.
Yeah. Have you ever seen anyone someone that you admire, they didn't do it?
Yeah.
Why are you falling into this trap? But I thought about this, right? The science-based lifting thing. Gym influencers are there to relate to people who go to the gym and to influence other people to go to the gym. If you start advocating for intense science-based lifting, you actually increase the barrier of entry of people who start the gym because you make things harder.
Mm-hmm.
That was my sort of idea around it. What do you think?
I think it's arrogance. And it's going back to what I said about myself when I was a teenager. I know best. If you created a control group of all the most popular sort of science-based lifters on Instagram or TikTok, whatever, most of them would probably be like between our ages. There'll be sub sort of 18 to 23. Now, like, I can think of one outlier. That's Jeff Nippard. I don't know how old the guy is. He's maybe pushing 30, right? He's a little bit older. But most of them are younger guys who maybe have only been training themselves for a year, even less. And I hear it all the time, and this really, really annoys me, is the obvious comment on all of their posts is, well, Ronnie Coleman didn't do it. And then their reply is, yeah, but he could have been better if he did. And it's that in and of itself, I think, is that sort of teenage young man arrogance of, I know best.
Yeah.
So I do think it is a little bit of arrogance, especially when people go, yeah, someone who has got to where I want to be could have done it better if they do what I did. So I think it's just the kind of young man sort of ego, bravado, maybe a mix of ignorance, not purely just arrogance. That might be a little bit harsh to say, but ignorance too. Just being a young man and having not enough life experience to go, okay, maybe this guy knows better. Maybe mom was right. Maybe dad was right. I should probably stop speaking and start listening.
I think what's so interesting about this sort of arrogance, it's not only in the gym, it's whenever you learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you start getting to a new topic, you start thinking that you understand it better than other people. And like, sure, to some extent, like if I start talking to you about moral philosophy and the moral truth and moral decisions, it's like, yeah, I've started reading a book on it. I'm not the expert at moral philosophy, but to some extent, I will get into conversation and say it. And if someone gives like a rebuttal or to push back on something I said, I'll be like, it would almost, if anything, if they say something that kind of makes sense, but then when you like counteract with something else you've read, you're like, oh, you're just being stupid. Like, I know what I'm talking about. There's this sort of superiority involved in it. I think this happens a lot when people start going to the gym. Like, I had this stage when I was like 15 and I started going to the gym and I became a bit of a prick. And it was just because I thought I knew better than everyone else who didn't go to the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was worse. I thought I knew it better than everyone else who did go to the gym.
Oh.
Yeah. A proper arrogant teenager who couldn't be told what to do whatsoever.
There's this interesting idea when you brought it up, I kind of connected the dots just now. When I talked to Debbie Tin, when I had her on the show, she's like an old powerlifter. I talked to her about this idea. When we got older, we think we know it all. Like you see old people who refuse to try new things because they think they figured it out. Like, I've lived life. I know better than you what is best for me, at least. Not for you, maybe for me. And the point that you make about having this young teenager attitude, thinking that we know it all, it's like this pendulum that swings. We're here, we're these young kids, we think we know it all. When we get older, we get to this point. I think at least some people do get this point.
Know it all, know nothing.
Know nothing.
Know it all.
Know it all.
Yeah.
So it's this weird pendulum that swings. But I think we need to live life where it doesn't swing at all, where it's just here.
I know nothing.
I know nothing.
Yeah.
You see this a lot, actually. This is a bit off topic, but you see this a lot. There's this stage from birth to when you get older. So when you're born, you're in this stage of unconscious incompetence. Then you hit unconscious competence, because as children, when you're growing up, you kind of absorb everything like a sponge.
Yeah.
Then you hit conscious incompetence, and then conscious competence. But then that's dependent on you from that stage. The conscious incompetence to the conscious competence, that's very dependent on the person themselves, because you'll realize, if anything, most people actually end up living life through this unconscious incompetence stage, or unconscious competence stage constantly. They just get led down a path, and they kind of automatically walk down it. It's like there's no, even though we have this sense of autonomy and agency, it's just like, let me just walk down this anyways. Let me follow it because it's giving me a path.
Of the beaten path.
Yeah. But yeah, my point being that there's these stages of conscious competence and unconscious competence, and it's very dependent on the person whether you decide to become a competent individual or not. And then it's linked to this swinging pendulum with age.
So what would be the barrier to the conscious incompetence?
Yeah.
To then becoming competent?
To becoming competent,
because there are still obviously people who perhaps somewhat blindly walk the beaten path through life, but are not necessarily incompetent people. So what would be what would you need to step through that door between incompetence to competence as a sort of young adult?
It's strange. It goes on a different sort of note, but maybe there's my own sense of ego when I said something like that. You make a good point, because it's just because the path is trodden doesn't mean that the people who are walking it are incompetent. And I think it's a very egotistical view to have. And I think I should probably rid myself of it. But yeah, to think that, if you're following the trodden path and you aren't doing something that's different, involving yourself in aberration, then you are less in a sense. But that shouldn't be the mindset.
But this is one of those things where, again, it's contextual, because there are people who are absolutely like that.
Yeah.
But then there are people who aren't. So it's kind of that grouping of competent incompetence. You could then create subgroups in that of truly incompetent and conscious incompetence, but kind of competent.
This idea of competence is actually really strange. I was talking to my girlfriend about this yesterday. Just I was taking the train back from Chelmsford. One of the train guys was there standing next to the security guard, and my ticket wasn't working to let me through, so obviously I had to go up to him to show him my ticket. I went up to him and I showed him it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, could I see your rail card real quick?" And then while I was doing it, he was like, "Oh yeah, you can tell this guy is yoked. You can see it through his jumper," and he's grabbing my arms, and then he assumed I was heading to Nottingham, because that's where I was going with all my stuff. And he was like, oh, do you go to NTU or UON? I was like, UON. He was like, oh, this guy's jacked and smart. And I told my girl about this. And then she was like, oh yeah, you are smart. And then I thought, what this is like such a me thing to do, but it's like, what, I don't think I'm smart. What even defines smart? It's very contextual, because you could know what 2 + 2 = 4 is. You then becomes smart to a child.
Mm-hmm.
But in the general consensus to yourself, that's not very smart. It's very dependent, and it's also dependent on who you compare yourself to. Like, I don't think I'm smart. I'm just kind of listening and learning. And then if the external perspective of you're smart comes along with that, sure. But I think with the competence thing, it's very is it objective? No, it's a subjective thing, like whether you think you're competent or not. And that value is defined by the people you're around.
I think it's in that sense, then it's good to maybe think you're incompetent or think you're not necessarily smart, because then you're judging yourself on the company you keep, either physically around you or the people you look up to and consume their content. It's that always be the dumbest guy in the room so you can learn off everyone else. When you're the smartest guy in the room, you need to go to a different room.
Yeah.
So is it then a good thing to think that you're not necessarily smart or you're not necessarily competent? Because like you say, it's contextual to who you're judging yourself on. You know, you go to a primary school, you're going to be smarter than all the kids there. You go to university, probably not. The professors are going to be way smarter than you. A lot of the other students might be. But that in itself is pushing you to keep studying. Or if you want to make it financial, if you hang around with a bunch of millionaires, that's going to make you go, right, I need to fucking work harder. You hang around a load of broke people, you're going to go, who wants some dollars? So it's kind of, is it then a good thing to think you're on that conscious and competent side?
You see, so with this situation, I ended up playing devil's advocate on myself. So after I told her that, I was like, okay, now let me play devil's advocate on myself. This is what I think. And if you do not think that you have good traits, how can you respect yourself? That's a really good question to ask yourself. But then I said, that's a good question for a future self for me to answer.
Like, I'm going back to that. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was going back to the luxury belief of people who've made it saying, oh, you need self-love and all that. But is that what actually got you there? The self-love here would be, I am fucking smart. But what actually gets you there is, I ain't smart. I need to work harder. And that's what gets you there. It's that luxury belief that changes. But it's the everlasting question of, again, it's balance. Yeah, like, you can sit there and think you're the dumbest guy in the room, and that may take you so far, but at some point, you're probably just going to crash and burn and just go, oh, why am I so fucking dumb? Fuck this. I'm going to give up. I'm happy where I am. That's where you need the balance of going, you know what? I have actually made loads of progress. I'm actually pretty fucking smart. Or I am actually pretty wealthy. I've made loads of money. I've got successful businesses. But I still need to do better. And again, it might circle back to what I said at the beginning about maybe like internalizing things of, you can have that thought of, I'm not doing enough. I'm not working hard enough. I haven't made enough money. I'm not smart enough. I'm not big enough. You need to balance the thoughts of, you know, I have done really well, to, I still need to keep working. It's fine to feel one thing as long as you don't let it control you fully. It's the balance that probably nobody has found.
This balance is hard to, it's hard to tactically put your finger on, because there's so many devil advocates and pushbacks I can put to this sort of thing, where it's like, yeah, I should probably think that I'm pretty stupid. Like, I don't know much. Like, I know nothing. That's the best. I've read so many fucking philosophers' names. I can't relate who to who. maybe Socrates who said that, or I know Epicurus said, a man cannot learn what he already knows. And if you believe you know something and aren't open to the possibility of understanding that you do not know that thing like you know that thing, you rid yourself of the possibility of ever learning to know that thing, or to the depth that you would have wanted to.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going on with that is, there's this, to go on the competence thing, there's this thing called the zone of competence, or there's this other thing, the zone of proximal development. That's it. That's the other thing. So if you imagine 3 circles, circle, outer circle, and a bigger outer circle.
Yeah.
In the middle is your comfort zone. This is where you want to stay. Ideally, this is where you want to live your life because it's easy. On the outside of that is your zone of proximal development. This is the zone you want to be in, where things aren't too hard, where you go to the point of outside of that zone of proximal development, which is the third or larger circle, where things are too hard for you, where if you try, you just fail, and it demotivates you from ever doing that thing again. It's like, fine, let me just sit back and stay where I am in my comfort zone. So there's this sort of this elastic band. If you go too far, if the elastic band gets too strong, which is when you head into that outer circle, it'll just pull you straight back to your comfort zone. And you want to sit in that zone of proximal development, which is where things aren't too hard, but they are hard enough, like on the edge of conceivability, where you do improve.
Yeah. Again, not taking it too far.
Yeah. Taking the right thing too far. Yeah. If you do that, then this is, I literally had something. Taking the right thing but too far. I've read something about this and it like flashed in my head for a second and then it's gone. So when I was talking to my friend about overthinking, again, his name is James, he said doing anything over is bad for you, effectively. Like you end up ruin the thing. So overthinking, he said overthinking in general is when you are thinking past the point of productivity. Doing anything over is doing that thing past the point of productivity.
Yeah.
So like in terms of overthinking, it's just if you are thinking too much, you're thinking past what is helping you achieve results. And if you do alongside of overthinking, then it doesn't become overthinking anymore. It just becomes thinking.
The barrier moves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly what you were saying. The right thing, too much of it can be bad. Doing anything over is past the point of productivity. And I think this works with the negative emotion thing as well, where it's like, chip on my shoulder, I need to keep working harder, I need to prove them wrong. It works. But if you do it over...
Yeah, it's very easy to self-destruct or implode if you're too much of a chip on your shoulder or too negative.
Yeah.
In terms of like your self-speak, which sounds so like pansy to talk about self-speak, but even like what you
self-speak, what do you
like the way you phrase things in your own mind, like even you could phrase the same thought in 2 different ways. Going back to like smartest guy in the room, dumbest guy in the room. You could phrase, I'm the dumbest guy in this room, I need to work harder. Or you could phrase it as, I'm not as smart as the smartest guy in the room. And it's not, I think again, that moves the barrier of what's too far. Because if you constantly sat there thinking in whatever context, I'm the dumbest guy in this room, you're eventually going to implode. You're going to go and cry in the corner because you've just told yourself you're the dumbest guy in the room over and over and over. But if you rephrase it to, I'm not the smartest guy here, or I'm not quite as smart as that guy that I want to be, that barrier of where you go into the corner and cry, that moves.
Yeah.
So I think, and I know talking about like, I think it's positive affirmation is the proper term for it. I hate being the guy who's talking about that because it does sound really maybe demasculine and a bit pansy. But I do think it is important how you phrase things within your own mind, because it moves that line of, where do I implode? Or where is this over negativity? Or where is this just productive negativity? And the same might go the other way. Where am I being positive about myself? Where am I being overly positive to the point where I'm back inside that comfort zone bubble and I'm not getting anything done? It's the right thing taken too far for the 10th time today.
Yeah. There's a couple of things, like about the over positivity thing that you just mentioned. When I had Leila Daniel on, she was like, she doesn't like living the state of toxic positivity. And I asked her what she meant by that. She said it's being overly positive to the point where you are just being delusional. Like, you aren't looking at reality as it is. And I think, like, to push back on it, I think it's like, unless you have big dreams for yourself, how are you ever going to achieve anything? Like, you have to be delusional to some extent. Then it's the over thing. Okay. You can't be over positive. You can be positive. You can be optimistic. You can't be over positive and optimistic.
Ooh.
And to touch on the other point about the positive affirmation, this is actually an interesting path to go down. There's the difference between self-acceptance and self-affirmation. And I think a lot of people think self-acceptance is, let me put this in an example. I got 60% on a test. I could have gone 100%. That's what I tell myself. I could have gone 100%. This 60% isn't a representation of who I am. I could have done better. Then you have self-affirmation. No, that's self-affirmation. Self-acceptance is, I got 60%. I am 60% right now.
Yeah.
How do I get to 100%? And I think, again, how you phrase things in your head bridges the gap between how you feel and what you're going to do about it.
Mm-hmm. It's the everlasting lesson that nobody's quite managed to learn. I don't think everybody's found the right balance of staying within that point where it's not over, it's not too far. But again, you listen to podcasts and things, and you can at least hear someone's experience of, I did this, I think that was probably a bit too far. Whereas if you just watch, like, you take it in the context of what built some successful bodybuilder, their muscle, you watch a video on YouTube that's 5 years old and you see them do something and you go, that's what got them there. You listen to a podcast that came out a week ago, they go, I did that, but I think that was overdoing or overtraining or overthinking, whatever, too far. I still haven't quite found the balance of what's perfect.
Yeah, but on that point, if they were overdoing it, wasn't that one of the things that got them in the place that they are now?
Perhaps because everyone's got their own emotional bias on what they think works for them. You know, it's very difficult in bodybuilding because if you're in business, it's quite easy to just look at some graphs and go, are we doing better than last quarter or not? Whereas in bodybuilding, it can be very subjective to go, have I really made progress or not? You can think something is right for you and it might not actually be the case.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more difficult to, like, as for that specific context, it's a little bit more difficult to say, and maybe you can't take people's, can't take people at their words, not necessarily because they're lying, just because maybe they don't know. Because it's not perfect science, is it?
Yeah.
Whereas something like business, it may not be a perfect science, but there are hard numbers involved.
Yeah.
Is your cash flow better than it was last quarter, last year? Is your tax return better than whatever? It's easy. It's written there. It's on a number. Even if it's not necessarily money, you can go, right, customer feedback. Is it of a higher out of 5 rating than it was last time? Yeah, no, very easy to see.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more easy to take someone at their word there that something worked for them. But again, you still want to listen to what they have to say. It's in hindsight.
Yeah, you make a good point. Just because someone did something doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think that's the best way of looking at advice. if someone tells you how to do something or they give you a piece of advice, you shouldn't you shouldn't look at it as they're telling you what to do. You should look at it as, okay, they've given me this piece of information. What can I use out of this piece of information to help me in my current situation?
Mm-hmm.
Information versus commands. I think that's a really good not dichotomy, contrast between the two, like understanding you should have between the two things. Advice isn't a command, a should. It's a piece of information which you could use, not a should. All right, moving on. Male body dysmorphia is on track to overtake female body dysmorphia in the next 10 years. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's probably about right. But the counter to that is, as male body dysmorphia rises, you might also see male obesity rates drop to an equal amount. Because if there's more people, let's say, getting into the gym and getting invested in health and fitness, yes, there are more people who are going to have body dysmorphia, but there are also going to be a lot more people who are healthier, fitter, in better shape. So I think it's a bit of an unfair metric to track something on. Because yes, body dysmorphia, it's overwhelmingly negative for the most part. It's not a good state of mind to be in. But it can come with a lot of positives. So I think it's true. Like, yeah, male body dysmorphia absolutely will take over female body dysmorphia for maybe less than 10 years. With, even bodybuilding in and of itself in the fitness industry is still very niche. But even at the rate that is growing, like that is growing massively each year. If I went to a random show last year and I go to the same one this year, it's probably double the amount of people there. Like that is an exponential rate of growth. So the rest of the health and fitness industry has got to be growing even more than that. So yeah, it will. But I think that doesn't have to be a negative thing. Just rephrase it, respin it, try and look at the positive side of things. Male obesity rates are going to be a hell of a lot lower. Even if you look at like the average testosterone count of males from 70s to now it's halved.
Yeah.
Could we see that start going the other way if more and more people are invested in healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle and being fit and active? For the medical industry, that is an overwhelmingly positive thing. Yeah, okay, sorry, you might be a bit sad about the way you look. That sucks. But you're a lot healthier. And now, there's less of a burden on the NHS. Now we have more time and money to see more extreme cases, patients who really need urgent care, not just someone who's got an illness because they didn't know the first thing about eating healthy or going to the gym and they haven't left their sofa in 3 days.
Yeah.
So I think in this instance, that negative is vastly outweighed by the positives. And yeah, it sucks. I can tell you from personal experience, body dysmorphia, it sucks. But I really think it's far from the worst thing that you could have. I'd rather have body dysmorphia, but a perfectly healthy physical body, than be very happy about the way I look. But my insides be screaming for nutrients and activity, and my cardiovascular system is shot. So I think it's a positive thing if you want to look at it that way.
I think you're right, where it can provide people with the activation energy again, or to people who are already working out, a catalyst to working even harder.
Yeah.
But I think when there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. You take away people becoming ill in a physical sense and make them ill in a emotional, psychological.
I think that's probably the story of the 21st century though, isn't it? We don't have smallpox, cholera, but at the time of those, we didn't really have depression, anxiety. So the story of the 21st century is there's no solutions, only trade-off. We've traded off a lot of physical illnesses that no longer are a problem, or even extinct maybe, for mental illnesses that we don't really know how to treat. Yeah, you can give someone who's depressed some sertraline. It doesn't fix the problem. It's more of like, it's a Band-Aid. So yeah, you're right. It's a trade-off. I still think, I don't know, is it overwhelmingly positive if we've now got issues that we don't know how to deal with? Because if someone who comes in and let's say they've never been to the gym, they live a very unhealthy lifestyle, they absolute shit and sit on the sofa 10 hours a day, we know how to treat that. Yeah, it's a massive strain on the National Health Service, for sure. But we have a solution for it. We don't necessarily have a solution for body dysmorphia or the mental ailments that can come with that, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, whatever they may be. So yeah, it's not solutions, it's a trade-off. We're trading one thing for the other. Yeah. So I guess it depends how you look at it as to whether it's a net positive or not. I still think on the balance of things, I think it is still a net positive to trade those things off. But, you ask 10 people, you might get 10 different opinions. That's just my opinion on it.
I was about to touch on it by saying, yeah, the issue becomes more of one of the self, in terms of this body dysmorphia that you're dealing with, or this anxiety that you may have on top of the way that you look, can be solved through own psychological self-work, rather than the sedentary lifestyle being solved by physical self-work. It becomes much more of a issue for the self to be done in your own time. Again, they're both things that could be done in your own time. But I think you're right about taking the strain off the NHS. It's a good point. One thing that I found interesting about this body dysmorphia idea is women have been historically valued for their beauty and the way that they look. So it makes sense why their levels of body dysmorphia would be higher than men, but obviously it's not. So it looks like that this pendulum is swinging, where men are becoming increasingly more attentive to the way that they look. And some people, at least this may be a factor why a lot of people get to the gym. They want to look good for their partner. They want to attract more girls. And I think when we look at physiques that are something that we admire, we kind of assume that difficulty equals value, which equals attractiveness. This is an interesting topic to get into, because there's this misconception of, if I become bigger and leaner and more muscle, I will get more girls, or I'll get more love in my life. And this is something that's really not. Yeah, this is very linked to like deep traumatic issues, where it's like, in order to get more love, I need to work harder or stuff like that. And that's maybe something that's bred through your childhood. But it's interesting, right? Because to an extent, it does work, because there is an increase in people who are able to attract short-term mating partners versus long-term ones. You will not, being in better shape and having more muscle doesn't mean that you get longer-term relationships. Like, you won't have the love and the romance that you were looking for by getting in better shape. It's probably good for you, but then to counteract that, there's so many things going through my head, but to counteract that, there's you can look at it as the traits that you acquire, the attributes that you acquire when you start going to the gym, would be valuable to someone who you would want as a long-term partner. Again, doing the right thing, but not too far. This is also very much linked to, I wonder what you think of this, the dating market in particular. And it's where because of pop culture, women set the standards for men to rise or fall to, right? And pop culture manipulates the standards that are set by women, for example. So I'm completely open to being wrong on this, but if we watch movies, we watch shows, the people that we're supposed to root for are the people who don't have a job, sleep in the car, semi-attractive, ragged clothes. Those are the bad boys who win the girl in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the guy with the stable job, who seems to be living a pretty normal life, really gets the shit when he's in the movie. So I think women may attribute difficulty to value, because that's typically how we value things. If it's hard to get, if it makes sense, that is valuable. So if the love is hard to get, that means that the relationship is valuable. But that's not the case. And I think this creates this problem, where are all the good men at? But that's because you set the standard of what you wanted out of a guy, because you believed that working hard for the love meant that it was valuable.
Yeah, I think that's an issue of a couple of things. Is like, and again, it ties so well into body dysmorphia. It's just unrealistic standards set by media, and not necessarily social media, but movies, things like that. Like, you ever watch a movie that's based on a true story, and it shows you the real life person after, and they are way uglier than the actor who played them. Every time, 100%. You know, like, imagine I have a biopic about my life, and then Chris Hemsworth plays me, right? Everyone's gonna root for me so much more. No, you don't. A bald Chris Hemsworth. But I think it's an issue of, you know, movies, social media, magazines, whatever, creating unrealistic things, or even just unreal things that don't work in the modern world but work in the movie world or whatever. And then I also think perhaps equally because of media, movies, whatever, I think we romanticize mediocrity or melancholy a lot, when that it's a fantasy, and we romanticize something, but then when it's actually presented in front of us, like, mediocrity is not really particularly attractive.
Yeah,
you can romanticize these things in your head that go, oh, this is what I want, and then when it's presented in front of you, it's different. So I don't want to blame the media for ruining everything, but kind of gonna.
Yeah, I think they're not to blame for everything. They are a large factor contributing to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, the argument you hear is, oh, we didn't have this problem back in 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. And sure, they may have had it and may just not have realized it or tracked the data for us to know, but they probably didn't have a lot of these problems, at least not to the same extent. And if you look at the common denominator, media, was it there? No. Do we have these problems? No. So if I'm laying blame at a doorstep, and I know it's not necessarily just them to blame, or just the movies, just the magazines that Photoshop images of, you know, women's waists, guys' muscles, whatever. But I think it's the largest factor in play that's kind of created these unrealistic expectations within the dating market for both men and women. You know, to like exactly like I said, the women have their waists pulled in magazines, men have their shoulders blown up and their abs airbrushed. And you kind of look at it and go, doesn't look like what I expected. Doesn't look like what I romanticize. It doesn't look like what I see in the media. Or, you know, I just watched a rom-com with Matthew McConaughey, and why does this guy not look like Matthew McConaughey? Because Matthew McConaughey is the 0.01% of human attractiveness. Yeah. So unrealistic expectations.
I think to some extent this links to what we were talking about earlier, the masculinity thing. And I do want to touch on this before we finish, because I think this is a really important point. We have sort of been sold a lie that masculinity will be the solution to all our problems. Like, if you become more masculine, you'll make more money. If you become more masculine, you'll get more girls. If you become masculine, you'll get leaner and bigger in the gym. Like, this is the solution. This is the Rosetta key, the Rosetta Stone to your solutions. But again, it's vague enough to fit your situation, your ideals, to be sold to you as the solution to all your problems. But frankly, it's not, because everything is so contextual. And I want to hear your thoughts on that first before I touch on the other thing. The everything being so contextual in terms of masculinity being the solution to all our problems. Like, you had Tate come about. You had to stop caring about your emotions, get out of bed, work hard. That's a part of masculinity. It's not the whole thing. But we've been sold that it is.
Yeah, the wrong thing taken too far. Yeah, I absolutely. Like, I'm sure I'm not the only young adult that has kind of, I don't want to say fallen into that trap, but been sort of led down the wrong path. When you're young, especially with social media, and everyone's saying something and everyone's got their own opinions, and suddenly, because of the interconnectivity of the 21st century, you hear everyone's opinions. Speaking from my own experience, I know that I was definitely sold this lie, so to speak, of masculinity is the fix of all problems, and not necessarily that it was actually the fix of all problems. I don't think that was necessarily a lie. It's just the idea of what masculinity is. And I think, I don't want to say it again, the right thing, push too far, but at least in my own experience as a sort of impressionable 17, 18, 19-year-old man, and particularly with things like Tate, but I'm going to take it more into my own niche of bodybuilding. I look at Dorian Yates or whatever. I definitely had a vision in my head as a late teenager, of what it was to be a man, which is absolutely not what I've found to be a man. I thought it was this, you don't show emotion. Yeah. You shut up all things. You lock in all this sort of, I think as a sort of meme, this has died off a little bit, but that idea of the Sigma male.
Yeah.
It has died off a little bit, but I was so just completely sold into that's a man. That's what you have. You have to be this lone wolf shadow figure. You don't show emotions. You don't talk to anybody. You've got a goal, then you ain't letting anything get you. You ain't gonna have normal relationships, nothing like that. And I was so completely sold into that, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, that's what it is. That's the secret, or that's what it is to be a man. And that was so wrong. And I didn't have a very good time as a late teenager. I spent the last few years in pretty much a perpetual state of depression. I was anxious. I really didn't like who I was. And it's funny, because I actually made a shit ton of progress, at least within my bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But I think it could have been better. And I know I wouldn't have. Again, you got to go through the struggles to find your own conclusions. It's the being born rich versus going through the struggles of becoming rich. If you don't go through any struggles, you perhaps don't learn these lessons. So I can't say that I regret having experienced any of that, being sold this sort of toxic lie on masculinity. But at the same time, I know I could have done things better. I could have, I could still have relationships with my parents. I could still be friends with some of my childhood friends that I completely pushed away for no real reason. I could have experienced more while still maybe making the same amount of progress within my career. I don't know that for sure. But I was definitely sold by this lie of toxic masculinity, or at least overly sold into it. And I've since found that, that don't show emotions is bollocks. No, you don't want to let emotions rule your life. You don't want to let them dictate too many of your decisions, but you're allowed to feel them. If you're upset for whatever reason, whether it's valid, whether it's not, fine, be upset. Like, sit in it, go cry in the corner, or whatever you want to do. As long as after you've wiped those tears away, you get up, look at your to-do list and go, right, I've got to do this. Okay, I feel like shit. I feel sad. That's fine, but I'll do my best to get on with it. Whereas in the past it was, you're not allowed to feel sad. In fact, man up. And it was just the right thing taken too far.
Yeah. I really appreciate you, man. This has been a great conversation. I think you've got a really good head on your shoulders in terms of this dichotomy between emotions and actions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And I think you're a really good conversationalist. Like, you brought out a really good conversation from my heart as well. So yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.